Now it's time to get the inside scoop on all the electricity going on in Mississippi Thunder Speedway. It's time for Thunder Talk with Dan Bailey, brought to you by Jailhouse Saloon. Now, here's your host, Dan Bailey.
The 11th Annual Rivercity Rumble is in our rearview mirror. Looking forward, we see the Herco Companies Night at Mississippi Thunder Speedway this Friday evening. But I thought we would continue to look back to the 11th Annual Rivercity Rumble with this week's edition of Thunder Talk and talk with an individual who had a pretty good weekend, not only at the Rumble, but also on Saturday at the Big Gopher 50. Joining us on Thunder Talk this week is Brandon Davis. Brandon, you come away with a second and a third place finish at the Rivercity Rumble, another top three, I believe, at the Gopher 50. Great weekend for your number 50 machine, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad at all. It was actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be at Fountain City. That track is really, really fast now compared to what it used to be, and I don't get on anything like that anymore, so I was pretty happy with that.
You know, we were kind of struggling with some weather in the area, but we had a good turnout of the modifieds both evenings at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. Always a good turnout up at Deer Creek. The competition in the modified division has just gotten stellar, hasn't it?
It's been nuts. The last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, the chassis builders have all really stepped up their program and given guys really good base setups in their cars, and they're able to come out of the box and be super, super fast, and then they can fine-tune from there and get even a little bit quicker, so it makes it really tough. It's not as easy anymore to be dominant as it once was, and I don't really know that anybody can be dominant anymore. I think dominant anymore might be getting 8 or 10 wins a season. You might be doing good if you're on 30, 40 nights.
Talking about these drivers being able to, I'll put it in my words, purchase almost instant success, brings to mind a discussion that you and I just had recently. You have not done that. You've decided to go your own route, and you are driving your own car, aren't you?
Yeah, I was hooked up with a guy who wanted to try this for a business adventure. That didn't work out for either one of us, but it worked out in my favor as I was able to build a jig from scratch and build my own car from scratch. And, you know, some guys take these cars that other guys have and maybe copy them and take some notes from them. And this one here is its own little conglomeration of stuff. There's really nothing like it. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. It's not bad. I take a lot of pride in it. It's a pretty good hot rod. And I remember when I was a kid at like 10, 11 years old playing on my parents' old Windows 98 desktop computer. There's a paint function. I remember I used to like draw little frames and stuff on there, and it's always been an interest of mine. And it's pretty cool to kind of live that childhood adventure and dream.
So this chassis that you're driving right now, is it a scenario where you created it initially and you've tinkered with it through the past couple of years, or has it stayed pretty honest to the very first build?
Oh, it's changed quite a bit. I built it for a guy up in Hibbing, Minnesota, Rick Canada, and he went from being a customer of mine to being a really close friend. Honestly, there's weeks we talk more to each other than we do our significant others. But this particular car, he actually raced it the 2017 season. It sat for a little over a year. He didn't race it at all. And we went up there on a Tuesday night and grabbed it and brought it home Wednesday. And I raced it that weekend to go for 50. I didn't have time to put on scales or nothing. And we got fourth of the thing from like 14th or something. But this past winter, I changed a lot of stuff on it to try to get closer to what I think a person needs to have now to keep up with guys. Because our corner speeds have increased so much than where they were years ago. So it has changed quite a bit. But the basic, I guess, construction of it is the same. It's just minor little things that have changed.
Well, let's talk about the 2019 season that you are embroiled in right now. It sounds like you are, if you'll pardon the pun, firing on all 8 cylinders. Things really going well for you this year.
Yeah, it's been better than I thought it was going to be. A lot of the work I did this off-season seems to be paying off pretty good, which is awesome. I don't think I've exactly found all the speed out of this thing just yet. I think there's been a few nights here that I've gotten close to really finding that special setup that I'm looking for, but this past weekend was a really good weekend for us. The whole weekend I felt like I was missing just a little bit of something, and it doesn't take much with these guys to fall off and be behind. Rodney was over here this weekend, and he was just lights out all the nights that he was around. Whether it was at your guys' track the first 2 nights or Deer Creek on Saturday, he was just stellar. It doesn't take much to slow yourself down to where you feel like you're really lacking compared to those guys.
You know, you talk about Rodney being so fast, and of course you're talking talking about Rodney Sanders, who was the double night feature winner in your division over at Mississippi Thunder Speedway on Thursday and Friday night. But you are a fast one this year as well. As a matter of fact, leading the point standings at Deer Creek, aren't you?
Yeah, we were. If I'm not mistaken, last time we were there, I had a DNF. I think Cummins sneaked ahead of me by 9 points, but I think this past Saturday was actually for track points, if I'm not mistaken. And our positions flip-flopped. So I think now I'm back in the lead potentially. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's been really good over there. This car actually probably handles the best at Deer Creek out of all the tracks that I've been at so far with it.
Continuing this discussion about a quote-unquote local driver battling those national traveling drivers, not only is your success local, but you're also having a great year in the national standings, aren't you?
Yeah, it's working out that way. Mother Nature's been hard on everybody, especially the guys down south. Generally, this time of year, they have 15-plus shows on us. And, of course, in the USA national standings, they take your best 20 shows. So they're able to try to critique and manipulate their points best they can and get rid of those low point nights and replace them with some good ones. But this year we're all neck and neck. They have the same amount of shows as we do roughly, and right now we got a decent lead, and hopefully we can continue to have good nights and don't have any more of those DNFs, and I don't do anything dumb behind the steering wheel anymore and have any brain farts, and we can have a nice solid rest of the season and give ourselves the best chance we can at that, because it looks like we're in pretty good shape to have a run at it anyways.
So do you feel like you can focus mainly on what I would call local racing at your local tracks, but still potentially come away with a national championship? Or, on the other hand, do you feel like you might have to venture out and do some traveling to try and hit as many different events as you can to rack up more finishes?
Well, that's the thing that is kind of the unknown. The way the points totals work, car counts is huge. So we don't know what's going to happen. It might be a situation where September 1st hits and we're like, gosh, dang, we need to try to go somewhere else maybe and try and rack up some more points. And we might have to start traveling a little bit. It's hard to say. There's a big race down in Webster City, the USA Nationals. They give you 48 points just to show up. So if I'm in contention for this deal, I have to go down there. And it's also a situation where the other guys are going to be there, so it'd be nice to be able to maybe capitalize on that and have a good run. And maybe you can even get some more points yet. So we'll have to wait and see. It's a tough deal. It's early yet. I haven't even hit 20 shows yet, neither has anybody else. Until you hit roughly 25, 28 shows, if you get that amount of shows, and then you start to see the picture starts to be painted as to who's got what in their back pocket for shows and point totals and stuff, and that's when you start to know who you got to worry about.
When you get into an undertaking like this, I don't think it matters much whether you're racing simply locally or you're following a touring series or trying to find the events out of state or out of your normal area that you would like to be competing in. It always takes so much assistance nowadays in racing, and I think a lot of that starts with great supporters. So give us a rundown of who is helping you, not only get that car to the track each and every week, but also putting their name on the side of that race car of yours.
Well, first and foremost, I have to thank my wife. She handles me pretty well during the weeks. I'm one of those guys that when I go to bed, I can't stop thinking. I get in bed and toss and turn forever, it seems like, and she's had me where I have dreams and I'm talking about racing and stuff, so she does good with the support. I have some really good pit guys that help me out. A good friend, Joe Bauer and Nick Zago, as well as my great uncle Ken. They're always with me all the time and help me during the off season whenever they get a chance. And without those guys at the tracks, it'd be nearly impossible to do what I do. But yeah, the sponsors are huge. I've been blessed to have really good ones. They've been with me for a long time, probably. There's a few yet that have been with my dad, in fact, before I was racing. So I've got supporters that have been around a long time with me. Josh Eilenfeld and Amanda Starks, they're with Trelo Motorsports, Trelo Trucking. They're actually a big reason why I was able to get this car back and get it in my hands. And then, of course, Red and Diane of Carol's Corn. They've been with me for a long, long time. Guy makes some really nice popcorn. Stuff is tasty. And then Mike Lawson of Ron's Repair. He's a new guy in the car, but he's a great supporter. We have my great uncle's construction business on the car, Davis Construction. Chad Weirs, he gives me some nice brakes and parts and makes me anything cool that I might think of or want to try at Weirs Machine. Don and Mary Nystell of Nystell Trucking. They've been with me since the beginning. They actually sponsored my dad for a long, long, long time. Bruce Fierkson of Shaper's Oil, Greg Jensen of Land Pros, Kevin Stoa at KS Engineering. I'm actually running a pretty small engine in this car, a little 355 Wasota Concept engine. The thing is keeping right up with the big engines, so this thing runs pretty good. And Buzzy Adams of Buzz Signs and Graphics, he always makes this thing look pretty sharp. John Coster with K2Ag.com and Farm Boy Barbecue, as well as Eric Heim at Grain Handler, and the great people at Waste Management. The other guy that I would like to give a big shout out to is actually Joe Provo Racewear. He helped us out with a design this year for our shirts and sweatshirts, and they look phenomenal, and they're just flying off the shelves. There's a lot of people on this car that help out and make sure it's able to get there every week, and without them it'd be impossible. It really would.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned almost in passing just a moment ago was about your engine situation, and I don't think we want to get bogged down too much in the technical aspect of it, but recently, I believe it was maybe it was last week, you had mentioned on social media a quote that I thought was wonderful, and I don't have it word for word, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. You said something to the effect of, as a driver, you always want more power, but the engine that you have is giving you enough power. Are you sticking to your guns? Are you liking the way that this engine battle is playing out in the modified ranks?
Yeah, I mean, the engine I have, it just happened that this guy who had the car before me that I sold to had this engine built, and it was actually one that I wanted to build myself to try. And it does just fine. I run on alcohol. It makes right around 580 horse. It's roughly 60 to 70 horse shy of what most guys have, I would say, on a weekly basis. But it does just fine. There's nights like down at the Rivercity Rumble, I will admit that on night number 2, I needed more horsepower. I was up there with the tongue hanging out, and in that particular race, I could say that if I had more horsepower, I think I could have been faster. But nights like that are few and far in between, and I don't let it bother me or make my decision change in what I have for an engine in the car. This particular engine, a guy can purchase from Kevin Stoa for roughly $11,000 before tax and dyno time. Not much more than some of the top dollar B-Mod engines. So it's a really nice piece. It's cheap to maintain. You know, during freshening time, it doesn't break the bank. And with where I am now in my situation, it just makes sense for me and it works for me. It'd be nice to have some of the big 420 engines that are full rollers, but with where I'm at financially and stuff with my budget, this just makes more sense for me.
Let me go even further back in our discussion. Let's rejoin that discussion about points. I've seen drivers chase points, and it has affected every driver differently. Some it adds a lot of stress, almost too much stress. Some, however, just eat it up, and they just love getting into those points battles. How about you? Are you having fun with this? If it does come down to you chasing points this year, nationally or whether it's at the track, are you a points racer, or do you just like going out every race night and having some fun behind the wheel?
Well, I really would like to get the points with this particular car. With how we build these frames, they don't last forever, and this car means a lot to me, being its number 1 off a jig. So I would love to get the national championship with this car just to say it did it, And I don't know that next year if it'll have the potential in it or not. So I'm going to go for it this year and really try. But I don't let it affect me as far as my driving or my mentality at the track at all. It's just, you're there to race, and however you do is how you do. It kind of is what it is. Don't do anything you can't do. Just keep everything within your means, and as long as you do your maintenance and stuff during the week and try to make sure everything's prepared, that's the best you can do. So I try not to let it bother me at all at the track and make me try harder than I should or do things I shouldn't be doing.
I can hear it in your voice. There's a smile there. I don't know. I can't see you because we're talking on the phone, but I can hear a smile on your voice. You're still having fun with this, aren't you?
Oh, it is. It's so much fun. I mean, I can't really... I'm sure there's a few select people that know what I'm talking about, but when you build something like this yourself, because it takes so much time, I probably took more time with this than I needed to because I was being really picky and stuff about things I probably should have been picky about. But it is so cool to win in your own car that you designed and built and all the effort. I mean, before I ever built this car, I designed it on a computer, and made a model of it, and then I put it into reality, and it's just cool. I can't explain it. It's a really good feeling because there's a lot of guys who build cars and they don't work very well. It's really tough right now. Everybody's so competitive. I feel like, honestly, I got lucky with this car and how it works. I don't know what I did that made it as good as it is, but it's pretty decent. It's not the best thing out there by any means, but it's pretty decent. It's a competitive car, and it's really cool.
So does it ever concern you whether or not you will be able to replicate the comfort and the success that you have with this particular car that came off of jig number 1 and the following car that you're going to have to replace this one with?
Well, I mean, I don't know. That very well could be. This might be just its own little special, unique piece. Every chassis builder is going to struggle with consistency in cars. It's tough. You can build them all exactly the same, but if you could be something as simple as you welded them different a little bit. You could do the same weld pattern, but the shop's warmer or colder or whatever it might be, the car is going to be different. I don't think there's anybody that can build these things exactly the same. It's just unheard of. So yeah, you do get cars that have their own little unique characteristics, and this might be just a good one. That's hard to say.
Well, I tell you what, it was a pleasure watching you have such a great run down at the 11th Annual Rivercity Rumble. We know that you can't come down to Mississippi Thunder Speedway each and every Friday night, but when you do come down, it's a pleasure to watch you hit the high banks and battle with the competition. And on that note, I also say it's a pleasure having you join us on Thunder Talk this week. Brandon, thank you very much for joining us this week, and best of luck throughout the rest of the 2019 season. Go ahead and chase those points, and who knows, we might have to chat again later this year about your national championship.
Oh, I sure hope so. Thanks, Dan. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, don't forget, race fans, this Friday night, Herco Industries at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. There is a high payout for the modified racers. Hint, hint, Brandon Davis. You might have to come down and give it another shot. But you race fans are going to have the best seat in the house because you get to see superstars like Brandon and the rest of them who are going to be hitting the track this Friday night, battling not only for the money, but the glory of a potential feature win as well. Hey, those of you listening on the radio, don't forget you can hear the entire conversation between Brandon and myself on the Mississippi Thunder Speedway YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out.
Come on down to the Jailhouse Saloon. Yeah, come on down to the Jailhouse Saloon.
The Jailhouse Saloon is where everyone wants to do time. Come on in and nab up some of the best homemade pizza around. The Jailhouse has happy hour weekdays from 2 until 6, free pool on Mondays, and lunch every day at a great price.
The Jailhouse Saloon where everyone wants to do time.